Hi everyone, my name is Grant Perkins. Today Sadie, Aiden, and I are going to be presenting deepfakes. We're going to be talking about a couple concepts and how they relate to deepfakes. So we're going to be talking about censorship and copyright. We're going to be talking about privacy and crime using deepfakes. And we're also going to be looking at a scenario where deepfakes were used, and we're going to perform an ethical evaluation using concepts that we learned in class. Now, before we get into that, I'm going to give an overview of deepfakes and the technology behind them. For those who don't know what a deepfake is, it is when one person's face is generated over another person's face algorithmically in a video. To better illustrate what this means, I have a fun picture to our right. It's a picture of a little kid wearing a Yoda costume. However, Elon Musk's face has been generated over it. Now, this is a pretty silly example, which is why I included it in the presentation. But unfortunately, 95% of all deepfakes are pornographic. 5%, like that remaining 5% of deepfakes, are silly, like this, or political. There's been a lot of issues with deepfakes in politics. And some are for research. So lots of researchers are working with neural networks and such to generate better and better deepfakes and detect them. Now, I mentioned, neural networks. So deepfakes are actually generated using machine learning. One example of an algorithm that generates deepfakes are two autoencoders. So we'll look at one autoencoder at a time. So one autoencoder will take a video of a person, and from that video, it will try to generate an image of this person's face. That's the encoder part. Now, the decoder part of the autoencoder then takes the picture of the person's face generated from the encoder and tries to recreate the video. Now, it does this for two different people's faces. So we have one autoencoder for one person's face and one autoencoder for another person's face. Now, to generate a deepfake, we take the encoder for one person's face and the decoder for another person's face, and we put them together. And when we input a video and a picture, we get out this horrible mess that we see to our right with Elon's face perfectly merged into this child. Super weird. Now, a lot of research is going into deepfakes and they're getting better and better. And with that, it's being used more and more. So right now, it's being used for fake news. So people are taking political candidates and deep faking them onto compromising or controversial situations, trying to manufacture controversy where there is none. It's also being used for financial fraud. So we live in an information age. Zoom's being used a ton. You unlock your phone using your face. So what people are trying to do is they're trying to commit financial fraud by putting someone else's face onto their body and trying to get money. And of course, deepfakes are still being used for a lot of porn, unfortunately. Okay, so now we're going to talk about censorship and copyright. Now, one example is Facebook. So Facebook recently released that they are now banning deepfakes from being posted on their platform at all. They said their reason for this was because the people who are posting deepfakes have the intention to mislead. So I agree with this. Facebook should be banning deepfakes, at least for now, until it's more clear to people that deepfakes exist. Potentially there are good uses for it, but not right now. I think also that Facebook is banning deepfakes because they're primarily pornographic, and it's an easy way to just ban more porn because it's a social media site. Also, in politics, the FBI has been issuing warnings about Russian and Chinese deepfakes, especially with regards to the 2020 election. There was plenty of deepfakes being created of candidates and mostly like fake news ones, but the government is involved. Also, in regards to copyright, the videos and images that are used for deepfakes are often copyrighted, like the porn companies and the people's faces are often owned by other companies. So by generating these deepfakes, they are violating their rights.
In common law jurisdictions, the victim of a deepfake can sue the deepfake's creator under one of the privacy torts, the most applicable of which is the false light theory. Under this theory, the victim needs to prove that the deepfake incorrectly represents them in an embarrassing or offensive manner. In the case where a deepfake is being used to promote a product or service, the victim could sue the deepfake's creator under the privacy tort of misappropriation. Under this theory, the victim can recover any profits made from the commercial use of their images. Under the circumstances where the deepfake makes factually untrue statement about a person or harms their reputation, traditional defamation lawsuits may occur. Deepfakes may also be prosecutable under the cyberstalking law. The typical evidence needed for this case is that the creator of the deepfake's intent is to cause repeated and harmful harassing contact with the victim. The potential impact that deepfakes have on society is vast. For example, imagine that the night before an election day, someone creates a deepfake about a presidential candidate that depicts them in a bad light. There is a possibility that that deepfake could be a swing factor in an election, if perceived to be true by the public. Deepfakes can also defame someone's character. For example, revenge porn could be produced by an ex-lover of someone and distributed to friends and family in order to isolate them or try to remove them from their job. Deepfakes may also be used for false evidence in a criminal case. This brings the concern that judges need to be well versed in determining if evidence is legitimate or not. And with deepfake technology getting exponentially better over the past few years, it's becoming harder and harder to distinguish the real videos from the fake ones. One criminal case involving deepfakes occurred in July of 2020, when a mother sent digitally altered photos and videos of her daughter's high school cheer rivals to their coach in an attempt to get them kicked off of the team. These videos and images featured the underage girls smoking, drinking, and even some pictures were completely naked. In an attempt to cover up her tracks, she used a free texting app to send harassing messages to the 3 members of her daughter's cheer team, as well as to the team coach. Luckily, one victim spoke up and told her mother that the video was manipulated. When police investigated further, they traced the messages back to the mother after several search warrants. The police still do not know if the woman made the videos herself or if she hired someone else to do so. She is currently being charged with 3 counts of harassment and 3 counts of cyber harassment of a child. She is awaiting trial and denies everything despite the overwhelming amounts of evidence that is against her. In October 2020, 2 men were arrested in Tokyo for creating 8 videos of 4 celebrities using deep learning technology to superimpose their faces onto the bodies of porn actors. These men have been involved in deepfake pornography for quite a while, creating over 1,000 fake videos of approximately 80 different people. One of the men was quoted saying that it takes about 1 week to make a video that is 10 minutes long. They made a profit of 800,000 yen, which is about $7,334.71 in United States dollars. They did this by hosting their own porn website where they charged 300 yen for a monthly membership. They each await trial as well. If the jury finds them guilty, the victims are entitled to whatever sum was made from the videos that they were featured in.
The next thing we want to talk about for deepfakes is reliability and risk, as well as its effects on work and wealth. The main risk and reliability is for sites that use deepfakes for their content. If the software that produces the deepfakes is not functional, a site like this can lose large amounts of profit, being unable to produce more content for their site and their users. Another concern for the industry is its effects on automation. As a new technology that is being used for content creation, there is always a fear that content creators can lose their jobs to artificial content creation. But in many cases, this is a common fallacy, as even though these jobs may be lost, the industry still requires writers for the content and software developers to improve the content, and thus there is actually no net loss of jobs. This brings us to our last section of the presentation, where we want to go through a scenario that we created talk about the professional ethical evaluation, as well as evaluations using Kantianism and act utilitarianism. Thomas works at a comedy network and is in its graphics department for their top show. The writers want a sketch of a political figure spreading fake news for the show. Thomas makes a deep fake of an elected official saying highly absurd things for the show, which is clearly trying to make a joke of the matter. The deep fake gets taken out of context and spreads through other reputable news sources. The elected official loses his job over the remarks made in the video, despite it not actually being him who said them. Was Thomas wrong to make the deepfake for the comedy network? First, let's look at the professional ethical evaluation. Looking at the first principle, Thomas would need to accept responsibility for his work and need to address it in matters of public concern. And in another term, this means avoiding deception. So Thomas should be responsible for going to the news source that spread the deepfake and ensuring that and telling them that it was a comedy and a deepfake and showing that it wasn't actually the elected official who said the things. The next principle would be pleasing the client employer, which Thomas did, so that puts him in the ethical right. Principle 3, the third principle is product quality, and in this case scenario, we're not looking at the actual quality of the deepfake and how good it is, but I want to talk a little bit about inserting something and embedding it into the video to show that it was doctored or show that it is content created for the comedy site so that it could not be taken out of context and could not be used to harm or slander anybody. The last principle we want to look at is principle 4.05. And in this principle, it talks about disclosing to all people who may be affected. And in this case scenario, Thomas nor the news network informed the government official prior to its release, which would ethically be wrong and dishonest. As a result, this evaluation is pretty split. In the future, Thomas should make sure that the deepfake is more clear, that it is only for comedic purposes and not an actual recording. The comedy network should also release a statement taking credit for the work to help ensure the media is not portraying it as factual evidence, and so less legal repercussions happen. Now we want to look at Kantianism. In the first formulation, we want to think about, would we be willing to have this done with us, and would it be okay if everybody had access to this use of deepfakes? In this case scenario, I certainly think it would be an invasion of my privacy if people made deepfakes of me saying slanderous things, and it could potentially have influences on my job, work life, and social life. The next thing we wanted to look at was the second formulation, and look at the comedy network's intent for creating the deepfake. The comedy network's intent in this case was using the video as a means to get more views and clicks or money for the network. So because of these two formulations, we could evaluate through Kantianism that Thomas was ethically wrong to create the content. Now looking at act utilitarianism, we look at both the positives and the negatives of the outcomes from the deepfake. First, for positives, there was certainly a level of comedic value. The audience may have enjoyed it. The audience of the show may have enjoyed it and knowing that it was a joke and thought it was funny. But there were certainly a lot more harmful repercussions to the actions. By Thomas creating the deepfake, he has harmed the elected official, damaged his reputation in the government, got him fired from his job, which has effects on his wealth, and possibly harmed family and friendship ties. From this, we could discern that act utilitarianism discerns this as unethical. All right, thank you for your attention. Does anybody have any questions?